Yeah, he's really in love with that. He really wanted to be here.
Thank you very much. The President and I are about to get on Marine One and then Air Force One and fly to Toledo, Ohio. I look forward to a joint appearance in the heartland of America. We're going to have a great day in Toledo. We had a great day here yesterday as well. And not only we have a successful state dinner last night, but we had a series of meetings that confirmed our close relationship and built on our trust. As I said, Mexico is an incredibly important part of the United States foreign policy. It is our most important relationship because Mexico is our neighbor, and neighbors must work together, and we do. We're confronting a series of opportunities and issues. Over the past hours, we discussed the importance of NAFTA, not only between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, but free trade throughout the hemisphere. We've discussed a variety of issues that relate to trade. Trucking is an issue that about which we had a long discussion. Mexican trucks ought to be moving in the United States. I call upon Congress to take that provision out of the appropriations bill, otherwise I'll veto the bill. We talked about some commodity issues that we've faced. We had an issue on avocados, for example. For those of you avocado lovers, you'll be pleased to hear that we've solved that problem, and I believe the President is pleased with the progress we're making. When we trade as much as we do, there's going to be issues that inevitably arise, and we will deal with those with mutual respect and honest discourse. Secondly, I'm pleased to report that we've made great progress in cooperation in fighting crime. The President has told me yesterday about some additional criminals who've been arrested in Mexico. This is a crime-fighting president. He is dedicated to working with our law enforcement officials to interdict drugs and guns and coyotes on the border. And, Mr. President, I appreciate your effort. Our Congress ought to change the decertification process that, to me, sends the wrong signal to our friends to the South to have an annual certification process. Really, I don't think it's fair to Mexico, and I think it's counterproductive. And I hope they change the law on decertification. And finally, an area that has gained a lot of interest because it's an important issue, of course, is the issue of migration. We've had a lot of frank discussions on migration. We share a lot of principles. One, that we both recognize how important the contribution to our economy the Mexican workers has made, that we want people treated with respect, that we both have a mutual and shared responsibility to make sure our border is safe and that we enforce the border. That I hope to come forward with a program that will pass the Congress that deals with guest workers with some sense of normalization. I'd like to do that as soon as possible. There's obviously a sense of urgency in the President's message. I hear that sense of urgency, and my administration is willing to work as hard as we possibly can to get something done in a constructive fashion. Mr. President, I think this is a continuation on the road for trust, respect, and cooperation. And I want to thank you very much for your coming here. I appreciate so very much you bringing your beautiful wife. I look forward to our trip to Toledo and then dinner tonight at the Blair House with the President. And Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, I would not have much more to add on this summary of what great has been these 2 days to us, Mexicans, and to us in Mexico. The trust factor, no doubt, that is key, and these 2 days have been a great opportunity to advance in our conversations, in our frank speaking, all of this aimed at increasing that trust. And for the rest, I'm fully recognized and totally honored on the warm reception we have had, on the opportunity, extended opportunity to discuss and dialogue on different issues and matters with President Bush. So to me, if I would describe this, is a process that started back in Mexico on our first formal meeting, a process that had continued on an everyday basis, our working teams, and this I would call a station, one first station, which has been this state visit to the United States, where we had the opportunity to review the issues, to advance on each of the issues, and to keep on the commitment to work hard for the coming months and the coming years. So that's totally satisfactory to us. I really thank the American people for the warm welcome we have had, and specifically from Mr. Bush and his lovely wife. The attentions we have had are just something that we exceeded any expectations that we would have had. Y ahora un poquito en español, pues solo decir que después de lo que acabamos de escuchar del presidente Bush, me queda poco que añadir. Hay mucha información ya en manos de ustedes, detallada, de los distintos acuerdos, los distintos temas que se han tocado. El resumen es un avance, importante avance en cada uno de los temas. El resumen es un avance en la parte fundamental de esta relación, que es la confianza, y por tanto avanzamos, pero a la vez nos llevamos tarea para seguir realizando, sacamos muchos compromisos, asignamos muchas tareas a los equipos de trabajo, y esperamos pues que al paso de las semanas, los meses, sigamos de esta manera, no solo fortaleciendo la relación, sino dando resultados concretos a través de la relación. Gracias.
Associated Press.
Mr. President, even with this sense of urgency on immigration, tell me how difficult it will be to get a deal in the next year. And when you do give legal status to undocumented immigrants, how will you justify that action to the millions of Mexicans still waiting in line for legal entry, and the millions more people who are living in this country now after plowing through the legal process?
Right. Ron, that you've just identified one of the complexities of the migration issue. I explained this to President Fox, that there are many in our country who are undocumented, and we want to make sure that their labor is legal. And so part of the issue is, how do we match a willing employer with a willing employee to recognize the value of the work and to legalize that part of the process. And that's where we need to think creatively on a guest worker program. I mean, the truth of the matter is, if somebody is willing to do a job others in America aren't willing to do, we ought to welcome that person to the country, and we ought to make that a legal part of our economy. We ought not to penalize a employer who's trying to get a job done, who hires somebody who's willing to do that kind of work. So that's part of the complexity. The second half of your question really does point out another problem that we have to work through, and that is, there are one of the things that I have told the President is I'm willing to consider ways for a guest worker to earn a green card status. And yet I fully recognize there are a lot of people who've stood in line who said, I'll abide by the laws of the United States. And we're trying to work through a formula that will not penalize the person who's chosen the legal route, and at the same time recognizes the contribution the undocumented has made. That is part of the reason I say this is an incredibly complex issue. It is complex to the point where my administration is going to spend a lot of time on resolving that type of question. But to make matters even more complicated, we've got to work with the Congress. And we've got to come up with a solution that that Congress can accept. Now, I fully understand President Fox's desire for us to expedite our, to come up with a solution quickly, to expedite the process, and we're going to do that. I think one of the useful parts of this visit is for me to be able to sit down face to face, ojo a ojo, and to talk about why this is a complex issue within the country. That's precisely part of the issue.
Get it done in 4 months.
Well, he's asked that we do it within the year. One thing he'll find is we will put 100% effort into during the year, and I hope we can come up with a solution. I want to accommodate my friend. He's got a very important role to play, and that is as a spokesman for Mexican nationals living in this country, as someone who's deeply concerned about their future, their lives, and I completely understand that. And I can assure the President and the people of Mexico, we've heard his call. He's a strong, forceful leader, and we will do everything we can to come up with a solution to this complex problem.
Mr. President. Manuel Nava, Excelsior. Mr. President, along those same lines.
Which President?
President
There we go again, 6-0.
Can you be more specific as to whether or not among the set of issues or the set of values or principles that you share on immigration, you share specifically the goal of finishing this negotiation by the end of the year?
I share the idea of working as hard as we possibly can. Listen, the President came to Washington. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry.
Actually, I'm not sorry to interrupt you. I did it. It's an old trick here.
What would the United States want to see in return?
In return?
For maybe regularizing a number of illegal Mexican immigrants in the United States.
Well, first of all, I think that I don't think we ought to view this issue necessarily as a quid pro quo issue. This is an issue that we must confront regardless of a Mexican response. This is an employment issue in the United States. We've got employers who can't find workers and therefore then employ undocumented workers. And under our law, that's illegal. And it seems like to me we ought to have a direct and honest assessment of reality. But we are getting what we wanted from Mexico, regardless of the details of this particular issue, and that is strong cooperation. That's all we can ask. And the President has been very forward-leaning and working with us on a variety of matters, including better border enforcement and making sure we find those coyotes who are gathering illegals or undocumented folks and trying to run them into our country for profit. I can't think of anything worse. And yet this administration and this government and our governments are cooperating very closely on ferreting out those people who are willing to prey on innocent, hard-working people and stop that kind of activity. That's the kind of cooperation we expect, and we are getting.
Steve Holland of Reuters.
Mr. President, why are you abandoning the Clinton administration's attempt to bring up Microsoft? Will this help consumers? Did you sign off on this legislation?
He's asking about a legal matter, Mr. President. During the course of the campaign and throughout my administration, I have made it abundantly clear that on issues relating to lawsuits, ongoing lawsuits, that I expect the Justice Department to handle that in a way that brings honor and thought to the process. I respect and hold our Attorney General in high esteem, and I honor the work he's done. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Satisfied with the decision?
I'm satisfied with the fact that John Ashcroft is doing a fine job as the Attorney General.
Okay. Patricia Rodríguez.
Sí. Para el presidente Vicente Fox, ayer Alan Greenspan dijo que la economía americana se podría recuperar ya en el 2002. ¿Cuál va a ser el impacto en la economía mexicana? Y díganos de una vez si va a haber un recorte presupuestal en México antes de esta recuperación. Y dos, si no se da este acuerdo migratorio, señor presidente, ¿será un fracaso para su administración?
Bueno, primero sobre el futuro de la economía, tanto en Estados Unidos o a nivel global, a la que se refería el señor Greenspan. pues es producto de una observación muy detallada de lo que está sucediendo, y que él mismo aclaró ayer que si bien él se inclina porque ese es el escenario que viene, a la vez también dijo que estaba solo razonado en base a estimaciones casi personales, y aseguraba él que en este momento nadie puede predecir con exactitud cuándo es la recuperación. Lo importante ahorita es que no profundice la desaceleración, y eso sí parece estarse obteniendo, que ya es una ventaja. En cuanto a el impacto que la economía global y la de los Estados Unidos en particular tiene sobre la mexicana, pues es claro lo que ha pasado cuando se desacelera el crecimiento en otras economías, de inmediato se desacelera el crecimiento en México. Hay una relación muy directa. A mí me sorprende cómo todavía en varios países, cuando platico con otros presidentes, se le asigna la culpa individualmente a cada país por lo que en realidad está sucediendo a nivel global y mundial. Me parece que es muy importante que en cada país logremos salir un poco del bosque, ver el panorama global, para tener diagnósticos y juicios correctos, para que las soluciones entonces sean las acertadas. Finalmente, sobre los asuntos de recorte, nosotros lo que tenemos es un compromiso con el déficit fiscal que no pase de 0.65% en la economía mexicana, y estaremos atentos a cumplir con eso. Por el momento no se ven recortes a la vista, que no los ha habido más que aquellos 3,000 millones del principio de año. Lo demás hemos logrado cubrir la falta de ingresos por la vía de ahorros reales en el gasto de gobierno, lo cual permite que no sean afectados ni los ciudadanos, ni los estados, ni los municipios, sino que es solo un esfuerzo del gobierno federal por ahorrar este tipo de recursos y evitar que estos impacten en la economía.
For those of you who don't speak Spanish, he said President Bush's tax cut came right at the right time.
Ann Compton of ABC.
Mr. President, on that same rough subject, when you met with Republican leaders this morning, did you promise them, as they describe it, that every dime of Social Security will be protected? Does that mean you will not sign any bills that even temporarily take?
I told the Republican.
Take a swing at that.
He probably doesn't want to. I told the Republican leaders, like I told Mr. Daschle, and I'll tell Mr. Gephardt tomorrow, we can work together to avoid dipping into Social Security. I have repeatedly said the only time to use Social Security money is in times of war, times of recession, or times of severe emergency. And I mean that. I mean that. I think it's best for me to start working in a cooperative fashion with the members of Congress. Start by saying, let's work together to make sure that our budgets don't cause us to dip into Social Security. And of course, I've always got the ultimate way to make sure we bring fiscal sanity into Washington. That's what we call a veto, Mr. President. But rather than come from the negative perspective, my attitude as we begin the fall session is to say, we can work together. Let's do so. I repeat to the American people, there is ample money coming into our government to fund our priorities. And what we need is fiscal discipline in Washington, D.C. The tax cut that we passed was a very important move to make sure our economy begins to gather momentum and grow. The President knows what I know. When our economy is ill or slow or not meeting expectations, it affects our neighborhood. He's getting blamed for something that's taking place in America, and that's not fair. And so our tax relief plan is a part of an economic growth package. I urge the Congress to pass an energy package. That's a job creation package. That's part of economic growth. I urge the Congress to pass trade promotion authority. If people are interested in growing our economy so that there's more more jobs available, and then they ought to not only herald the tax relief plan, they ought to be thinking about how to pass an energy package and a trade promotion authority package as well. That's important for growth. We ought to be thinking in Washington, D.C. how to grow the economy. Now, I realize, Mr. President, sometimes there's second guessers in the political process, and there are some in Washington who appear to be second guessing the tax relief plan. My guess is that they probably want to raise taxes. If they're against relief, the fundamental question is what they're for, and I suspect if they're against one thing, they must be for raising taxes. And my argument to them is that would hurt the economy. Now, the best way for us to continue economic growth is to have a pro-growth plan in place and have fiscal discipline in Washington, D.C. I look forward to working with the members of both parties to insist upon and implement a package that is fiscally disciplined, and we can do that, and I'm confident we can do that.
La última pregunta de la conferencia, Juan Manuel Venegas, la jornada.
Presidente Fox, apertura del sector energético, combate a la corrupción y defensa de los derechos humanos han sido constantes en relaciones de Estados Unidos. ¿Cuál es su propuesta? ¿Cuáles son sus propuestas en esta nueva relación de confianza que está planteando el Congreso?
No te escuché muy bien la segunda parte. En esos temas. Bueno, yo creo que en el tema de energía, sin que tenga ninguna relación con la visita, porque después se hacen interpretaciones que vinimos aquí a vender la energía de México, no hay tal. Nuestra propuesta es paralela, la hemos hecho pública, se está trabajando con distintos diputados y senadores, y simple y sencillamente queremos asegurar que México cuente con energía eléctrica, con energía de petróleo, con energía de gas natural para el futuro. Y ciertamente, y como punto y aparte, en nuestras conversaciones acá, en lo bilateral con los Estados Unidos, de lo que hablamos es de la importancia estratégica de una política sobre energía para todo lo que es NAFTA, todo lo que es el acuerdo de libre comercio. Me parece que vale la pena prevenir y trabajar juntos para que a nadie en este territorio del acuerdo de libre comercio nos falte energía, para que a nadie nos impida tener altas tasas de crecimiento. Vale la pena entonces estar trabajando en esa materia aquí. Sobre los demás temas mencionaste corrupción y derechos humanos. Bueno, son temas propios de nuestra agenda dentro de México, en los cuales vamos demostrando paso a paso, de manera fehaciente, que nuestro compromiso es total para detener la corrupción y erradicarla, y que nuestro compromiso es el respeto profundo a derechos humanos dentro de México, para que así podamos también con autoridad moral extender esta promoción a otros países con los que tenemos relación. Esta es nuestra posición demostrada en México, y es parte, por supuesto, de los temas que tienen que ver con el exterior en materia de nuestro apoyo incondicional a democracia, apoyo incondicional a derechos humanos, a respeto a recursos naturales y a la promoción de economías humanistas y de oportunidades para todo el mundo. Ya presentamos allá en Congreso nuestra ley.
Joy Toledo.